In 2018, I was just starting my YouTube channel, trying to carve out a niche by exploring abandoned places. One day, I came across a forgotten gem in Maryland. It had been closed for years. I thought this would be the perfect video that put me on the map. When I arrived, the place looked even more run down than I expected. The parking lot was cracked and overgrown with weeds, and the walls were covered in rust and graffiti. I parked my car and grabbed my gear. The sun was setting in an hour, but I wanted to see how this place really looked like. I pushed open one of the glass doors, which creaked loudly. Inside, the mall was dark, the only light coming from the occasional broken skylight. Dust covered everything, and the silence was almost deafening. It was eerie, like the place was holding its breath, waiting. I started filming, narrating as I walked through the main corridor. Most of the stores had their gates pulled down, and the ones that were open looked as though they had been abandoned in a hurry. Clothes still hung on racks, and mannequins stood frozen in outdated poses. It felt like their glassy eyes followed me as I passed by. As I ventured deeper into the mall, the temperature seemed to drop. I could see my breath in the air, which was strange for a late summer evening. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just my nerves playing tricks on me. After all, abandoned places could be unsettling, especially when you are alone. Then I heard a faint sound, like a soft shuffle or a whisper. I stopped, holding my breath, straining to hear it again, but there was nothing, just the silence pressing in on me. I convinced myself it was probably a rat or some other animal, trying to keep my growing anxiety at bay. I finished filming the rest of the East Wing and started walking back to the food court where I had started. So far, nothing scary or surprising happened. I felt more confident to continue filming the West Wing of the mall in the dark. The sun was setting outside and the mall had become even darker now. I continued down the corridor, turning a corner when I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. There at the far end was a single store with its lights on. A flickering neon sign buzzed, casting an eerie glow over the area. I could have sworn it wasn't lit when I first entered the mall. I approached cautiously, the camera shaking slightly in my hand. I could barely read the faded and broken store sign. The gate was half open. On the shelves were a few toys, board games, and old action figures still in their original packaging. It was like stepping back into the 90s. I couldn't resist. I ducked under the gate and started filming inside. Everything seemed in perfect condition, almost too perfect. As I moved deeper into the store, I felt that cold sensation again, but this time it was accompanied by something else. There was a strong feeling that I wasn't alone. I turned around quickly, but there was no one there, just row after row of dusty toys and games. I forced a laugh, trying to shake off the fear creeping up my spine. "Get a grip," I muttered to myself, but then I heard it again, the shuffling sound, closer this time, followed by a soft, childlike giggle. I spun around, the camera light casting wild shadows across the shelves. The giggle echoed through the empty store, sending chills down my spine. My heart pounded in my chest as I backed away, nearly tripping over a pile of boxes. The light flickered again, and for a split second, I thought I saw a small figure dart between the aisles. That was it. I'd had enough. Abandoned places were one thing, but this was something else. I bolted out of the store, nearly dropping my camera. I didn't stop running until I was outside, gulping in the cool night air. I didn't bother to check the footage until I was safe at home. When I finally did, my hands were shaking. The video was mostly what I expected: empty stores, broken skylights, and dusty mannequins. But as I watched the footage from the toy store, my blood ran cold. There, in the corner of the screen, just before I turned to run, was a shadowy figure. Small, childlike, with glowing eyes staring right at me. And that giggle, it was unmistakable, captured clearly on the audio. I never went back. I never uploaded the video because I couldn't shake the feeling that I had disturbed something that should have been left alone. Even now, I sometimes hear that giggle in my dreams, and I wake up wondering if whatever was in that store is still watching me. I remember wandering alone in a strange city and finding this eerie hidden door. I still wonder what I saw inside. I had always wanted to visit Scotland, but I didn't expect it to be this cold. The wind was strong as I followed the tour group through the narrow streets of Edinburgh. Everything here felt so old, like the stones had seen a lot of history. I pulled my coat tighter around me, trying to keep up with the others. This was my first trip, and I was excited but also nervous. The city was like a maze, and I didn't know my way around. As we walked, I stopped to take a photo of the huge castle on the hill. But when I looked up, my group was gone. my heart started to race. I looked around, but the street was empty. My breath came out in little white puffs in the cold air as I hurried forward, hoping to catch up. But then I noticed something. There was a small doorway. Down a narrow alley off the grass market, it was hidden away with an old faded sign above it that said Antiques and Clothes. Curious, I walked closer. The windows were foggy, so I couldn't see inside, but the door creaked open easily. Inside, the shop was dimly lit with soft, warm lights that made everything glow. It was like stepping back in time. The air smelled like old wood and dust, mixed with a faint scent of lavender. Rows of beautiful dresses hung on wooden racks, their fabrics shining in the light. They were stunning, more beautiful than anything I'd ever seen, like they were from different time periods. I wandered further into the shop, fascinated by the details on the dresses, lace, beads, and delicate stitching. But the deeper I went, the quieter it got. My footsteps seemed to disappear into the silence. The back of the shop was darker, and the dresses here were different, older, covered in dust. The air felt heavier, and I suddenly realized I couldn't hear anything from the front of the shop. Panic started to build in my chest. I turned to go back, but something was wrong. The clean, bright front of the shop was gone. The dresses near the entrance were now dusty and old, just like the ones in the back. The warm lights were dim, barely lighting up the room. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and the air felt heavy as I walked towards the front door. I started to breathe faster, trying to find my way out, but the shop felt like a maze, with old fabric and forgotten things everywhere. Every dress I passed seemed to have a story, but I didn't want to hear it. Finally, I saw the door ahead. I ran for it, almost tripping over a pile of old shoes that hadn't been there before. I burst through the door and into the street, the cold air hitting me like a slap. I turned around, expecting to see the shop behind me, but there was nothing. I backed away, my heart racing. How long had I been inside? How could it have changed so quickly? My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone, desperate to find my group. When I finally caught up with them near the castle, I was out of breath and scared. I tried to explain what had happened, but my words came out in a rush, and they didn't believe me. We went back to the alley, but the shop was gone. No sign, no door, just a blank wall where it had been. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. I believed that the shop, with its old dresses and quiet darkness, was something from the past, something that should have stayed lost.
Subscribe now.